Hey guys, welcome to another edition of Dan Reviews It. This is going to be a standalone Death Wish review, and actually I watched the original Charles Bronson version from 1974 just yesterday to kind of compare and contrast. So it'll sort of be a review of both movies, but more focusing on the brand new Bruce Willis edition. It was directed by Eli Roth and essentially takes the same premise from the original Bronson version. In this one, he is a doctor, Paul Kersey, played by Bruce Willis, like I said. And essentially, it's a revenge movie. He is off doing surgery at the hospital when three people break into his house and try to rape the daughter. She fights back. The mother ends up getting shot and killed, and then the daughter ends up in a coma. So obviously they send her to the hospital where Bruce Willis is working, and it goes from there. Essentially, the cops come and don't really have much to go on originally because, of course, they the mom's dead, the daughter's in a coma, so she can't really talk. So Bruce Willis eventually takes it upon himself to go exact revenge on these people. But along the way, starts taking down some other random criminals, acts of crime that he sees. He learns how to shoot guns for this, and the plot goes from there. So that's essentially what happens in the original as well. There's less gunplay involved. But that brings us, I guess, to the first real issue that's been bandied about with this film, is that right now, in 2018, do we need another Death Wish movie? Do we need a movie like this where just a citizen takes it upon himself to just start murdering people? And, of course, the timing is particularly bad for this film because the Parkland shooting in Florida happened just 2 weeks earlier. So, we could talk about that. Personally, look, if you're a fan of this podcast, you know that I'm, kind of a liberal-leaning kind of dude. I'm not so much in for the guns, but I get that this type of film will service an audience that is into all of that stuff. The NRA kind of faction, I guess you could say. Look, I try to take my own personal beliefs out of movies like this, and just enjoy them for what they are, or don't enjoy them, as the case may be. So I don't. If I was a studio head, maybe I would have pushed this movie back a little bit, just to distance it from the Parkland shooting. Like, if you remember the movie Gangster Squad, this is going back maybe 4 or 5 years now, but Warner Brothers had this picture, Gangster Squad, where there was a scene that was even shown in the trailer of a movie theater getting shot up. And obviously after the Dark Knight Rises shooting in Colorado, Warner Brothers got their wits about them and said, you know what, let's reshoot that sequence, push back the date of the movie, and they ended up releasing it a few months later. Wasn't that great of a movie regardless, but a movie like this, it's like you can't just reshoot a scene or two. I mean, this is the whole, plot of the movie. The whole reason this movie exists is as a tale of vengeance through gun violence. So, you have to kind of take that or leave it. Obviously, people that are interested are going to go see it. People that are too incensed by it probably won't. So, let's kind of move on from that topic. I do agree that the timing is not the best for this movie, but regardless of that, you've got director Eli Roth, who is always, for me, a little bit too visceral. Movies like The Green Inferno, I couldn't even watch the Hostel movies. That is too much for me. And there's definitely a few scenes here in Death Wish 2018 of some really, kind of gory, visceral stuff. There's a scene in the trailer where there's a guy under a car, and Bruce Willis, takes the car jack from under the car, and the car, you don't really see this part of the trailer, but, car blows his brains all over the garage. that kind of stuff. There's a scene where, since he is a doctor, he has this big gaping wound on his shoulder, and he like staples it. That was kind of gross. So there's definitely some of that Eli Roth stamp. I thought Bruce Willis was right for the role. I think he did a good job with it. The problem is it's nothing that he hasn't done 5 or 6 times before. This would fit right in with his filmography in the early 90s, late 80s. That whole Die Hard thing that sparked, really an entire career for him, and also sort of an entire genre of action movie. So he's good in the role. I can't complain about that per se. It's just he doesn't bring anything new to the table that he hasn't already done before. And then you've got his brother, played by Vincent D'Onofrio, kind of a deadbeat, but a good guy, and fingers start pointing to him about the vigilantism. He doesn't know a thing about it, and then he eventually does find out and tries to convince his brother to, stop what he's doing here. So I thought he added a nice touch to it. The circumstances were a little bit different in the 74 version with Charles Bronson. First of all, I had never seen a Bronson movie, but the voice that they do to caricature him on The Simpsons is like spot on. So I got a chuckle from that when I first started watching it, because it was like, no, this is like the guy they definitely portray in The Simpsons. But the circumstances were a little bit different. His wife does die. The daughter doesn't end up in a coma, but she is essentially catatonic. I mean, she's just so scarred by this whole thing that she doesn't want to help and can't really help because it's too traumatic for her. So it's sort of similar in that regard. And you can certainly tell that things were getting a little more lax in Hollywood for these R ratings, because it was only maybe 7 or 8 years earlier that the first F-bomb was dropped in a movie, and this movie just like has them littered throughout gratuitously. And then nudity obviously was kind of new to movies as well, because there's just there's kind of a half a rape scene at the beginning where they try, the criminals do, and so there's boobs all over the place. So it's a typical R-rated 70s action movie. It's definitely dated, so I can see why they wanted to do a remake 40 years later. I'd rather them remake Death Wish than remake, Flatliners, for example, something that's a little bit fresh and not really all that classic. Death Wish, love it or hate it, is like a classic action franchise. So, I can see the need to remake it. I just don't know if now is the time. I have to echo that sentiment. It doesn't color my grade at all, but it is a little bit odd to me that they decided to go through with the release just 2 weeks after the whole Parkland thing. Maybe they thought, well, if we do start having stricter rules for guns and whatnot, maybe then we can never release it, so why not do it now? I don't know. Then you've got Dean Norris as the cop, and again, like, nothing new to the table here. The guy's played a cop like 12 times. He, of course, really got his big break with Breaking Bad, no pun intended, where he plays the DEA agent, the brother-in-law to Bryan Cranston's character. So you've got that. But he's every movie I've seen him in since, he plays a cop. The only one I can think of where he did was Fist Fight, where he was the principal. But he's still like man of authority, but he's always a cop. So he adds, again, nothing to the table here. It's fine. It's Dean Norris as a cop. What a classic. So there's that. The other negative I have with it is that there just is like too many cooks in the kitchen here with the people that Bruce Willis is going after. Like, he starts out doing the vigilante thing, and kind of gets a taste for it, gets his feet wet, and does a couple of vigilante acts, and kills, bad people. But then, like, he goes to, guy number one that he gets a clue for in his, for his own personal story. and then he gets him, and he's like, "Oh no, like, yeah, I was there, but like, it's really this dude." And then he goes to that dude, and "Oh no, like, here's the head of it," So it's like they could have split the difference a little bit, because he's a vigilante like real quick, and then he just starts going one by one for his own personal story. I don't know. So there seemed to be, either get them out of the way all at once and then do more vigilante stuff. I don't know. But then the other thing was they had this framing device to, I guess, make it seem like, okay, well, we do have a moral conscience. Here's the moral conscience via these radio programs and people calling in, asking the questions like, is this guy a hero or is he not? First of all, we've seen that plenty of times before in just about every superhero movie where, like Batman, Spider-Man, like we just saw it last summer again with Spider-Man Homecoming. Like, it's definitely been done, and the people they get, it takes place in Chicago, which already, again, like, the timing, like, Chicago is known for its rampant violence. So, do we really want to suggest that civilians should just pick up a gun and start, killing people on their own that they see a problem with? Like, come on. It seems like a little bit of a slippery slope to, set it in Chicago. But they have a morning show there, the Man Cow Morning Show. And, I worked at radio for about a decade. I never liked Man Cow. I don't think he's funny. So, like, putting him in the movie just personally bothered me. And then the other person they have is Sway, who I guess is on Sirius XM now. I didn't know that, but he came from MTV and Total Request Live and stuff. Mumble mouth Sway. The guy can't interview. He's a bad DJ. So just having those two be the framing devices for me personally was like, I wasn't feeling that. But okay, so overall though, it was an okay movie. Like, I enjoyed it to a point, I think it's sending bad messages. I don't think that everything was necessary in it. But, Bruce Willis did a good job, like I said. And I was entertained by it, if nothing else. So, it has a lot of flaws. It adds nothing to the Death Wish lore. Willis isn't doing anything spectacular. I did like D'Onofrio as the brother. I thought he was probably the best part in terms of the characters. So I'm going to leave Death Wish 2018 with... I go between a C and a C+ on this movie. I'm going to give it a C. It was okay, but I think it certainly left a lot to be desired, and just the themes I don't think are necessarily what we need right now. So back to the original then, the 1974 version, obviously toned down violent-wise a lot because of the era. And in fact, originally he starts knocking people out with a sock full of quarters. So, like, definitely a little bit of a disconnect between that and the new one, because Bruce Willis pretty much starts right off with the gunplay. But, it was good for what it was. I've definitely seen way better 70s action movies. But for this type of a film, I can see why it did get so many sequels and the following that it has and all of that. But truth be told, it's not that much better of a movie. It's certainly dated, like I've said. So, I can see why an update might have been, in one sense, a good idea. I'm just not sure if the 2018 version was the one to do it. But it was okay for what it was. Plot-wise, it was typically the same. The cops, don't really have any leads, and so he takes the matter in his own hands, and both end sort of the same way. So, I'm going to give the 1974 version a B-. It's a little bit better than the new one, just because the new one just doesn't add anything. But kind of unnecessary. The original's probably kind of unnecessary, too. More fun in concept, I'm sure, in the 70s than it is today. The original also didn't take place in Chicago. I forget where it did. They said, but it wasn't Chicago. But so anyway, that is Death Wish 2018 and the original 1974. You know, look, if you like dumb action movies, check your head at the door kind of things, you'll probably enjoy it, to be honest. I kind of did enjoy it, if I'm being honest, but it definitely had a lot of problems too, so that's why I'll leave it with a C. That is going to do it. Lots more videos up on the channel now, and we're going to post more and more. Just did a video last night with Merlin about some Disney movies that did not do well at the box office years ago, so that'll be a fun one to watch. But yeah, that's going to do it for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.